I'm going to do when Beth.com, that'll forward you to the group spaces link. I also created something last night, mysurvivaladvisor.com, and either one of these links will get you this full report that I created as a result of being asked to speak tonight. And basically, I got about 15 pages. I'm going to try to go fast through this because it ended up being a rather exhaustive subject, survivalism, and I've done some research on it and created other reports, and I've linked them to this report. So if you go to, all I need really is, if you go to SarasotaEmergencySurvival.com, wait till like tomorrow because I'm going to post it tonight. You'll get a link. It's a Google document, and it's basically an ebook that I just wrote on the subject of survivalism. So it should have everything you need to survive pretty much any disaster. But I'll go ahead and start talking about it. What is survivalism? I define it as being able to live indefinitely without outside help. And that means no electricity, no water, no police, no government, indefinitely. That would be what a true survivalist should be able to do. Well, who is a survivalist? Mainstream media has portrayed a survivalist as a white, racist, redneck, bearded white guy who's holed up with beans and rice in a shed, you know, waiting to pick people off who come onto his property. But that is really not what we are. Your grandmother was probably a survivalist if she didn't grow up in the city. A devout Mormon is a survivalist. They have a year's worth of food. A good Boy Scout is a survivalist. So really, there's another word for survivalist that I prefer. It's the politically correct term, but I don't mind that because it helps popularize the movement, and that is a prepper. A prepper preps. Well, okay, we're preppers. So what are we prepping for? Well, some call it the end of the world as we know it, or some call it SHTF, when the excrement hits the fan. Okay? But then there's another more politically correct term, which I also don't mind, and that's called the crunch. Now, what is a crunch? A crunch is anything that would put you in a survivalism mode, anything that would force you to be having to supply your basic needs without any outside help. For example, I can think of a couple of things happening that I define as a crunch. A sustained power outage due to solar storms knocking out the power grid, or martial law from a direct physical attack against the U.S., or economic martial law, which in fact we were preparing for as a result of a financial meltdown. This is, in my opinion, the most logical, the most probable reason of why we're going to go into the crunch. But there's a whole bunch more. Another way the crunch can come is if the inflation rate is spinning out of control, which I call the slow burn, which we are already in. Here's what that may look like. I'm going to quote an email I recently received. A respected economist who's been right time and again is warning of a major inflation risk, even warning that 100% annual inflation for 3 consecutive years is possible. That seems like a situation best suited for a third world economy. But the truth is we are already witnessing price increases of core commodities like oil in excess of 100%. End quote. Now to me, this is the very least thing that we are now witnessing, namely the beginning of very high or hyperinflation. Rather than let it spin out of control into a total currency collapse, some say we will simply default on our debts as a country, and a new one world currency will be attempted to be forced upon the sheep who will be begging for it, rather than see their currency become more and more worthless every day. There's an interview with a guy named Doug Casey from the Lou Rockwell website that I like to read, and basically he explains it this way. They've already created trillions of more currency units, talking about the government and the banksters. Most of these are currently sitting in banks rather than circulating. That's partly because people are afraid to borrow and banks are afraid to lend, but also because the Fed is paying banks interest to keep what are considered to be excess reserves locked up. So these trillions of dollars that were created to bail the banks out are sitting there, but they're not going to sit there forever. Once these dollars start circulating in the economy, prices will rise rapidly. The other way for prices to really explode would be for the foreigners holding some 6 or 7 trillion hot potato dollars to start dumping them. With the U.S. government clearly unable to deal with its debt and the consequent credit rating downgrade, which was both inadequate and long overdue, those foreigners are getting pretty nervous holding dollars. And almost any sort of financial calamity could spook some central bank into exiting its dollar position wholesale. And once one of them starts, the race will be on, because no one is willing to be left holding the bag. So these are the two time bombs that are ticking away financially. The trillions of dollars outside the U.S. that could come pouring back in, and the trillions inside the U.S. that were created to paper over the leading edge of the storm. Either of those things could bring the end of the dollar as we know it, and both may happen all at once. Then I have in this report a little graph of a government debt. I guess you can't see it, but basically it's out of control. There's no way the government's going to pay this debt back. They spend a dollar. Every dollar they spend, 30 or 40 cents, they're borrowing. And they can't not spend that money because people depend on it. The politicians will never cut back spending 30 or 40%. So if this was a household, it would be bankrupt. So, but I don't want to get sidetracked on politics, because I'm probably preaching to the choir with you guys. But that's what I think is probably going to be the most likely reason why we have to go into a survivalist mode. What other kind of crunches may occur? Well, they include everything else ranging from natural disasters, hurricanes, earthquakes, heat waves, and floods, possibly causing nuke meltdowns such as the China syndrome melt-through that is currently happening despite a media blackout in the Fukushima disaster. There are terrorist attacks, EMP or dirty nuke bomb. Now an EMP, I think you should know what that is. It's electromagnetic pulse. And when a nuclear weapon is exploded high above a particular target, everything within line of sight of that explosion, everything electrical becomes broken. It short circuits. And so we discovered this when we were playing around with the airburst nuke experiments in the 50s. And basically, we don't blow up stuff in the air anymore for that reason, because they blew up a bomb at the Bikini Atoll, and Hawaii lost power to their street lights as a result of it. But anyways, that is something that's a real threat. It's a lesser probability than an economic meltdown, but if a country could launch a bomb that could explode, even just one centrally located above the United States could knock out the grid for 1,000 miles in every direction. And this would not come back. There's huge transformers that need to be ordered and take many months to build, and if everybody is out of electricity, they're not going to be building these things. They're going to be in survival mode. So there's those type of attacks. And there's all-out thermonuclear war. There are plagues. There are viruses that may come from biological weapons that can spread and cause large quarantine areas. Enemy hackers can disrupt government and business computers. Iran is supposedly trying to hack our electrical and water grids. Also, many different ancient cultures predicted that 2012 would bring drastic changes to mankind due to the Earth passing through the center of the Milky Way. Some predict pole shift and other drastic catastrophes which could destroy most of the world's population. I could go on and on, but you get the point. So then there comes to be something called a normalcy bias. Okay, normalcy bias is purposely fostered by the mainstream media and the government. The normalcy bias says that if it hasn't happened in our lifetime, it's probably not going to. It's a natural reaction when facing a crisis. For example, the Jewish people in World War II, in Hitler's Germany, not a whole lot of them got out in time, and they didn't believe that they would end up in extermination camps. the people in Hurricane Katrina. The same way, they didn't leave, and a lot of them drowned. So, why are preppers preparing? They're preparing because they've assessed the risk, and they've decided that there's a problem and their lives may be threatened. But obviously most people have not come to that conclusion because they're not preparing. This boggles my mind to no end, but it's the way people have the normalcy bias. So it's very important that you are properly assessing risk. When you do risk management for your own life, for example, you buy life insurance, right? Well, you store food, that's life insurance. You know, if you're prepping, that's just life insurance. It's the ultimate life insurance. One of my brothers, I have 4 brothers, all work for the federal government, they're mainstream, I'm the black sheep, but I said to him, Jacques, what are the odds that a nuclear bomb blows up in America sometime in your life? And he said, they're so close to 0, I don't even want to calculate. I said, that's funny because I think it's like about 85% chance in my life. And I still do. So because I believe that, I'm a survivalist, but he is not. Now, you know, I hope I'm wrong, but this is the type thing where if you're right, you get rewarded, and if you're wrong, you don't suffer any loss. You just have a bunch of supplies and knowledge and training, and you haven't really lost anything. So many people mock survivalists, saying they wouldn't want to live in the world the survivalist expects to live in. They say, for example, they'd rather be dead than survive a nuclear war. These are going to be the people banging on your door when the crunch comes, because they know you have survival stuff. So you have to think long and hard about that. And I don't have an easy solution for that. I mean, that is something you're going to have to decide for yourself, how you're going to handle people that know you have stuff and they don't. So we see the real threats, both geopolitical, like an economic collapse, or physical threats, solar flares taking down the grid. By the way, there was in 1859, there was something called the Chretien effect. There was a solar flare that was so big that it actually took out the grid in America. But the grid consisted of telegraph lines, and it fried them for hundreds of miles. NASA says that a once-in-a-lifetime solar storms may be coming in this solar cycle that we're now entering. And if we had a repeat of that coronal mass ejection that occurred in 1859, we would lose our grid, and we would be without electricity for probably over a year. The government said that if that happens, then 90% of the people would die. Because if you think about it, if you're on medicine, if you don't have any water, you don't have police to protect you, nothing, everything's shut down. And that's a huge problem. So the intelligent prepper combines all these risks and assigns odds, and then he takes out insurance based on those odds. But if they have normalcy bias, then people will just be in denial and they won't prepare. My family was just in an earthquake just this week. My sister turned white as a ghost. She said they live in Virginia. My mom was in a closet. She didn't even know it happened. She's 89, but another sister saw stuff rattling, falling off the shelves. The point is, there was never an earthquake in all of my life in Virginia, and never in 100 years, but you never know. If that had been a 7.0 instead of 6.0, they could be dead now. So if you assess the chances as being significant, enough for you to take action, then you'll become a prepper. So hopefully you're realizing that there are disasters that may occur, and now what are you going to do? Okay, to be a survivalist, in my opinion, I think you need 3 things. You need knowledge, you need stuff, and you need to practice with that knowledge and stuff. In other words, skills. Now the knowledge you can get by literally just printing out this report and all the reports that it links to. In fact, you can put them in a memory stick. And that's where I'm keeping, I have a bunch of survival books on a memory stick, and I keep it in a Faraday cage. It's a little device that protects against electromagnetic pulse. And if something happens, then I can plug it into my laptop, which will have power, and I can, you know, get all the knowledge I want.